Broadcasting from London, Ontario, Canada, this is Journeys with the No Schedule Man. Welcome, I'm Kevin Bulmer. We are here to celebrate and share the significance of our true selves and stories. And we've got a fantastic storyteller to share with you today, Ian Tyson. For the past 30 years, Ian has been entertaining and inspiring audiences all across North America, helping them realize their potential and to seek happiness in life. Ian's known for a lot of things, including his humorous and his heartwarming storytelling, along with his natural ability to deliver meaningful life lessons along the way. Ian and I connected through Mo Mondays, which is the inspirational event series that I run here in London. And Ian was on stage with me a couple of months ago from the time that we're recording this, and shared a wonderful story that everybody related to. And you're going to see in just a few moments why everyone connected with Ian so much and why I so deeply appreciate him and am excited to share him with you. Speaking of Mo Mondays, that's one of the supporters of this podcast. It's kind of like TEDx meets The Tonight Show. We have an event every single month at the London Music Club here in London, Ontario, Canada, hosted by yours truly. It is a whole lot of fun. If you're looking to get connected, encouraged, inspired, empowered, it is an uplifting evening. I encourage you to have a look at momondays.com/London, and you'll find all the information there that you need about upcoming events. And who knows, maybe we can even trick Ian into coming back on stage at some point in the future. Thanks to Connect One Consulting, my friend Gord Fancher. If you're looking to expand your professional network or grow your business, if you just want to learn about the art of connecting and networking and building relationships, such an important and valuable skill, I highly recommend reaching out to Gord. And the best way to do that is to visit connectoneconsulting.com. Thanks also to Laura Ma at Diamond and Gold Treasures, some of the finest jewelry in this area, also offering jewelry repair, custom design, and layaway. Laura, as I have mentioned in every podcast over the last 10 or so since Diamond and Gold Treasures has been involved, Laura is one of the best examples that I have seen recently of somebody just being themselves and representing themselves in a very natural way, using video and live video and storytelling to build their business. Laura is a terrific example of that, and I highly encourage you to connect with her on social media to see what she's doing to represent Diamond and Gold Treasures just by being herself. Simple as that. We've also shared a few videos together of she and I talking on my own Facebook page at facebook.com/No Schedule Man, and there are more of those to come. But the best thing to do is to go to Laura directly, diamondsgold.com, as you can see on the screen if you're watching the video. And if you're listening to the audio feed, Diamonds with a Z or a Z, depending on which side of the border between the U.S. and Canada you spell with. Diamondsgold.com. Susan and Luke from Travel Agents in Action has been a supporter of this podcast recently, and we are very grateful for her. Susan is a certified travel professional with autism travel and certified for those traveling with special needs, as well as being a fully TCO certified travel agent. You want to get somewhere, create some memories. She can and will help you out. Foreverpreciousmemories.ca is the best place to connect with Susan. She recently arranged a trip for myself and one of my business associates when we were going out to one of the western provinces of Canada, and Susan took care of the whole thing. And I thought, wow. Wow, I have been making life a lot more difficult for myself by doing all of this on my own, as opposed to enjoying the services of someone like Susan, who really knows what she's doing and makes it easy. Susan Iluk of Travel Agents in Action. Reach out to her and your life will get easier. Thanks also to Brett Lucier, Provincial Glass and Mirror, a professional full-service glass company owned and operated in southwestern Ontario. You can learn more at provincialglass.com, and you can hear the incredible story. I think it's an incredible story. I think it's a really valuable story of how Brett actually rose to the top of Provincial Glass and Mirror. He started on one of the lower rungs, the entry level at the company as an installer. He'll tell you that he broke half the glass that he tried to install, but he just kept working his way up until he got to where he is now as the sole owner of the company. Episode 87 of this podcast, he tells that whole story. Thanks to Brett and Provincial Glass and Mirror Limited. And Carol Trickit from Trickit Financial. Carol's just such a wonderful person. She is so selfless, so giving, has such a kind and compassionate heart. She specializes in insurance and investments for Canadians and newcomers to Canada. So imagine yourself if you're in a new country, you don't necessarily speak the language, or it's not your first language, and the whole system is different. Maybe banking is different and insurance needs, all that kind of stuff. Where do you start? What do you do? These are things that I haven't admittedly really thought about prior to connecting with Carol, and just really thinking about what she does with and for people who are new to my country here in Canada to help them out. Now, she also helps people who are well established and have been in Canada here for a long time as well. But Carol's really, really terrific at what she does, and an incredible human being. I highly encourage you to reach out to her at trickitfinancial.com, Trickit with 2 T's at the end. I also want to remind you that the No Schedule Man's Mindset and Marketing Mastermind community is now open for new members. This is something that I'm really, really proud of. Started under the name The Turtle Tribe a little over 2 years ago from the time that I'm recording this. But if you're looking for some ongoing support and encouragement in areas of both personal and professional growth and areas related to mindset and marketing, so if you are working with a small business, you're a solopreneur, you've got a community group, you're looking for some support, some collaboration, some creative ideas on how you can show up and share content, create content, videos, create a social media strategy, build your own brand, share about who you are and what you're doing in your own voice in a way that will help grow your business and yourself. This is where I would encourage you to go. The No Schedule Man's Mindset and Marketing Mastermind community. We have people in there literally from all over the world, and you can learn more about membership at noscheduleman.com/mastermind. And we would love to see you in there today. I'm really excited about our guest today. I've described his personality as that of the kind of person that just, it feels like a hug. When they walk in the room, their energy just lifts everybody else that's in the same room. And I felt like that about this guy, Ian Tyson, right away. And for him to invest time, and it is kind of a homework assignment when I ask somebody to to speak at Mo Mondays London, you have to put time into preparing it and everything that goes with it. And for him to have done that really meant and means a lot to me. And now here he is investing more time with me today to share his story with you. Ian Tyson joins us on Journeys with the No Schedule Man. It's great to see you. How does it feel to actually have a little bit of time, like a stretch of more than 24 hours at home? What's that like for you?
I'm on a good little stretch right now. This is a time of year in my segment of the industry that things tend to slow down a little bit. So I'm kind of marketing towards 2020 now. So I do enjoy having the time at home. Absolutely. And it's wonderful to see you, Kevin. Thanks so much for having me on.
It's absolutely my pleasure, Ian. Thank you. I'm curious about, I thought I'd start with mashed potatoes.
Okay.
When I say mashed potatoes, what stories, what significance, what ideas come to mind? Why would somebody like me even think of saying something like mashed potatoes when it comes to Ian Tyson?
Well, it's funny because of the story that I told at Mo Mondays and in a video that I recently put out. It's some new stuff that I'm kind of working in terms of food and cooking being a metaphor and being the delivery method for a motivational message. Yeah, I mean, when I was at the last Mo Mondays last week, and people were like, "Oh, hey, it's the mashed potato guy." Not sure if that's the title I want to go for. But
you could probably own that brand space pretty quickly if you aspired to. Just a thought.
Yeah. Well, so basically, the story of the mashed potatoes and why I think that you bring it up is it's a weird statement to say, but there's something that are very near and dear to me and important to me. I love to cook. It's one of my passions. It's how I meditate. It's how I relax. It's just very peaceful for me to do that. But where that came out of was, I came from a single parent home. My mom passed when I was 10 and was sick for about 7 years before that. And my brother and sister and I were latchkey kids, and dad was a solopreneur and ran his own business. And so one of our chores was cooking. One of the things that my older brother and younger sister, Arnie and Sarah, and I had to do was to cook. And we'd come home from school and we'd have a note. Here's what we've got to do. As I said, when I did the presentation at Mo Mondays and when I've done it at Speaker Slam, is that, my older brother was always in charge of some kind of meat. My younger sister was vegetables of some kind, and I was the carbs, and kind of still am. But the one particular kind of carbs that I made a lot, we're talking late 70s, early 80s, was instant mashed potatoes. And they weren't the best thing in the world, but I loved that it was my job, and I loved that that was the food I got to put on the table. And I became very adept at it for, a 10, 11-year-old, and thought it was great that I knew how to cook this thing. And it became part of my identity then. I mean, we would go to family therapy, and I remember our very first session, and the therapist said, give me your name and what your role is in the household. And I said, I'm Ian, I'm the mashed potatoes. and and it became part of my identity, but it became a way that we serve my dad, and a way that we gave gratitude, and it really fueled the engine for us. And so, yeah, that whole idea, the mashed potato story, if you will, for lack of a better title, is something that has become quite defining for me, and that I'm really leaning in on. And plus, it is one of my favorite things to make. I just make them a lot better than instant now.
Yeah, you shared a little bit about what goes into that recipe when you were with us at Mo Mondays, and you
Yes.
turned everybody into like salivating dogs all at once, which was
Well,
which
it's a
was
lifelong project. You got to up the game. It's constantly working.
it's interesting to me, Ian, when you mentioned family therapy and something like mashed potatoes, which links this whole timeline from back to what you described and right up till now. And as I'm listening to you, I'm wondering, well, wow, it sounds to me like there must have been some difficulties that were being worked through as well. And here's something that maybe arose during that time that clearly has positive energy attached to it, but also must be a little bit of a reminder of some difficulties that you and your family had to work through as well. It's interesting to me that you have taken that through line and decided to attach positivity to it, as opposed to assigning it related to difficulty. Do you see what I mean? Because there are some
Yep.
things that maybe we look at that and then they trigger us, where some of those memories that we maybe aren't as excited about living again come back up. But this hasn't been like that for you.
Well, I mean, let's put it this way, and I talk with groups whenever I have the opportunity, about things like positivity and negativity and the stuff that we carry. Um, Look, the negative things that happen in our lives are going to define us,
Hmm.
but we choose how they define us. It can either be something that weighs you down, and that's from people who make the choice to carry the weight of an entire event on their back, the whole weight of the whole thing forever. Or the choice you can make is, you got through that thing. Here's the strength I gained from that thing. Give yourself an achievement badge and move on. It never goes away. I mean, every April 26th, I think about my mom, for sure. That was the day she passed. Every day I think about her at some point. There's a picture of her right here on my desk. I was 10 years old. That was hugely impactful. And it was tough. I mean, being 10 years old, a lot of things about my development in certain emotional ways stopped. And that's something that I, didn't uncover until much later in life, very recently in therapy, about some of the things that, maybe had been not holding me back, but maybe affecting some of my choices and my decisions in my life, because part of 10-year-old me was still hanging in there. But we as a family, my brother, my sister, my dad, and I got through that time and became closer and stronger for it. And so, yeah, that food, that mashed potato through line, like, it's no wonder that my brother and sister and I all love to cook, because that was something we all had to do. It was one of our chores, but we all came to love it. And we compete for who's bringing what to family functions and stuff now. But food has always been something that brought us together, because even during those times, while we may not have been a family that, said grace every night, we absolutely gave thanks, whether we said it out loud or not. We were grateful for everybody that was sitting around that table. And in spite of the fact that there was an empty chair at the end of the table, we were grateful for what we had, and that got us through. And that's why, I mean, there is nothing better for me in my life than sitting around a table full of people. That's sacred. Sitting at the table and breaking bread together is the most precious thing. And I love when I do it with my family because there's always laughter. Even in those dark times, there was always laughter. And, you know, my mom's a big inspiration and a motivation to me, and somebody that I talk about a lot in my work. But so's my dad. I mean, if my mom is that perseverance piece, and, you know, in spite of the fact that she was sick, the good that she brought and the positivity that we brought, when I think about laughter and humor and making people feel comfortable and welcoming people in, I think about my dad. Because
Hmm.
even when we would have you know, if somebody was having a bad day, and he was a single father in the late 70s, early 80s, he was doing the best he could. But if he could tell one of us was having a bad day, well, then maybe he'd pick up a fork with, or a spoon full of mashed potatoes and fling that right across the table at you. And then there'd be a food fight, but then we'd be laughing.
Yeah.
You know, it was really beautiful when I think back on it.
I had a question pop to mind listening to you just now, Ian, that I don't think I've ever asked before. I don't think it's ever occurred to me to ask. And well, you mentioned the significance of April 26th as the date that your mom passed, and how that date will always be significant to you. And the question that popped to my mind is there value in, or how much value do you think there is in revisiting grief?
Excellent question. Glad you asked it. I think that grief is ongoing. I think that grief is something that never really does go away. I don't think you get over grief. You process grief. You deal with grief. I don't think it's something you ever get over. For me, again, it comes back to choices and how you choose to frame things.
Mm.
When I speak at schools, especially, which I'm grateful that I get the opportunity to do, sometimes I'll have a student come up, or if I'm speaking to a corporate client, I'll have somebody come up and say, you know, I lost my mom as well at this age, and especially if it's in a school, maybe it's something that's a lot closer for them. It might be more fresh. And I love when I get the chance to sort of talk one on one with somebody and to be as real as I can with them. I'll say, look, this is never going away, ever. It's not going to go away. I don't know what the day or the time or the thing is that's going to remind you, but you're going to get reminded. So the choice you have is this a weight on my back, or is this my fuel? Because that grief, that that sense of loss, because there's always going to be something empty inside of you. Um, the way I look at it is, am I living my life in a way that would make my mom proud? And if I am, then that's my fuel. Am I trying to live as full a life as I possibly can because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow? Then I'm making her proud. Am I connecting with people and trying to improve the course of somebody's day in some small little way? Then I'm doing her proud, but it's the fuel, it's the thing that's pushing me forward always.
I think there's also got to be an element in there too about revisiting that which you love. Hence the reason why there's grief to begin with, because of the, I guess, the perceived, not the perceived, the very real loss of that. Except that you can still carry the love with you,
Yes.
right? And revisiting that feeling. I think sometimes, every once in a while, I just get hit with this wave that seems to come out of nowhere, wishing I could have a conversation with my grandfather again. And he lived a good long life. He was 95 years old when he passed, Ian. So, um, but when I get hit with that, all of a sudden it's so visceral. I feel it right here in my throat and in
Mm.
my upper chest, and it kind of paralyzes me for a moment. And it feels heavy, but it also feels really warm and good at the same time. And usually when I just kind of accept it and breathe into it, it tends to sort of soften and then radiate through the rest of me with an appreciation of the love that I felt and still feel. Hence the reason why I wish I could get in the DeLorean and go back and visit him again and have a conversation with the me that I am now, with the questions that I have now, So there's, I don't know, maybe a yin yang to both of that. Is there's a bit of a wave of grief, but when you breathe into it, it radiates into something softer and more beautiful for me.
For sure. And I mean, I think that you are having that conversation in
Hmm.
some way. By the way that you're living your life every day, you're having that conversation with your grandfather. I'm having those conversations with my mother. I've lost all of my grandparents, and obviously varying levels of closeness or an intensity when they passed or whatever may have happened. And it breaks your heart when you think about it, but you're continuing to have those conversations by how you're living your life every day.
Hmm. I never thought of it quite that way. That's really exceptional. Is your dad still around?
Yep, dad's with us. He's 75. We just celebrated his 75th birthday. Dad's the best. I love him to death. So much of the man that I am is because of him, and I will say we're all grateful. He's 30 years on now from a quadruple bypass.
Wow.
So when I was 20, we thought we were going to lose him. And his cardiologist in London, before he retired, said my dad was one of his success stories because he was 30 years and all he had was a minor angioplasty in the interim. And he's done really well. And yeah, I mean, he makes me laugh. And when I look at myself with my bald head and my glasses on, standing beside my dad, I'm like, yeah, the apple's not falling far from the tree. But yeah, and he's married a wonderful woman. They've been together for 20 plus years, and
Mm.
she's amazing. And they fill each other up. And you look at them and the life they have in retirement now, and it's really relationship goals for sure. But yeah, I mean, so grateful for dad, and so great. I mean, I live in town. My brother and sister are still here with their families, and so we get together at family functions, and we get to sit around the table and laugh and carry on. And we all went out. My brother, my sister, and I, and my dad, and just the whole gang of us, and everybody's partners and what have you. And we got to go out for dinner and have this wonderful time on his 75th birthday, and it was magical. I mean, there are more years since mom has passed than there were before,
Hmm.
because this year will be 38 years since she passed, and she passed when she was 36. So it'll be 39 actually this April. So there's more years behind, but again, it never goes away. But is it a source of strength you carry with you, or is it something that weighs you down? Even when we've hit big milestones like 30 years. And yeah, dad's remarried to a wonderful woman that we love so much. Yvette's fantastic. Um, my dad, my brother, my sister, and I all went to the grave to go see mom, and just shared a moment. Just the four of us went for lunch together. And Yvette's, she understands, she gets that, and she's an amazing, stepmom, and is great. Um, though she didn't come into the picture till we were all like in our late teens, early 20s. So being mom was never a label she asked for. And we just call her Yvette, but she's great, and we're a family still, but a different kind of family, as there are so many different kinds of families out there. So
Yeah. You described earlier, and it's come up a few times, about how sacred you hold that space of being around the table and breaking bread and gathering. And I want to come clean before I ask this question.
oh
That
boy, here we go.
one of the areas that I know I am, I'll say, cheating myself, for want of better vocabulary, is in moving so fast through the course of the day, especially on days when my boys aren't around. So as you know, I think, Ian, I'm divorced and I have two fantastic kids, one of whom you met because he runs the sound at Mo Montes, London.
Sure does.
And they're with me about half the time, and they're with their mom about half the time. And that whole situation, to your point about there are all kinds of different ways that families can look and function. I know all about that. And we've got our own merry little band, but it works, and
Sure.
everybody's happy and well. But when they're not around, I race past, especially at lunch, those opportunities to sit and to nourish myself, not just with the food that I put into myself, but with moments to pause. And I really love your reflections and your thoughts and reminders, quite frankly, of how important it is to create those opportunities to really just be with each other.
Mm. Yeah.
And it's not just an investment in each other, but it's really an investment in ourselves, isn't it?
Oh, it absolutely is. I mean, one of the things, and I know I spoke a little bit about this at Mo Mondays, is, when I reflect, just speaking back to the mashed potato era, if we want to call it that,
Uh-huh.
but during those years when it was a chore, the thing I think about is how my dad must have felt.
Hmm.
Because, I remember being a kid, as we all do, and when it's, a major holiday like Christmas, or it's a birthday or Mother's Day or Father's Day, you didn't have money to buy anybody a gift. So usually in class at school, you'd make them something,
Hmm.
and it was often a piece of crap, that everybody else made. But you'd come home and say, "I made this for you."
Hmm.
And there's something so precious in those words, because I mean, I have two kids. I'm divorced as well. My kids are now in their 20s, but I remember back when they were younger and they'd come home, and I still have here in my office, I got a few little items that they made where they came home and said, "I made this for you."
Hmm.
And that just, oh, it breaks you, because they've put all of themselves into it. And so the fact that every day when we were kids, we got to say to my dad, "I made this for you." And we got to do that every day. That's why that space became so precious, because it was an act of service, it was an act of love, and it was an act of caring. And we got to do that every, like, I've got this little, here, this is Sammy, my youngest, made this for me back in probably second grade. But I've got this little clay thing here with, it says peace on it. So I think it was done around Christmas. I don't know. It's clay. It's barely holding together, but I still have it because that's precious to me. And every day we got to say, "I made this for you." And so the thing that maybe you're alluding to, I don't know, is the fact that one of the reasons I cook, like, I live alone, but one of the reasons I cook for myself and put a lot of work into it is the fact that I think we all need to find something that allows us to look ourselves in the mirror every day and say, "I made this for you."
Yeah.
But we don't. Sometimes we don't respect ourselves at all. We don't give ourselves gratitude for what we've built or the life that we have. And in doing that, it opens you up to so many more wonderful things. And I think we need to find those excuses or those reasons, those obligations, to look yourself in the mirror and say, "I made this for you," whether it's cooking or working out or taking time to meditate or going for a walk or whatever it is that you're doing that's for you, that
Yeah.
you did for you. Maybe you go to the movies by yourself. I don't care, but that you made this for you is incredible. And I saw you reaching for something. Did you find a piece of crap? You found
I want to be careful with how I answer that.
no,
Um,
I
I
use
found,
that term lovingly.
okay, I have a couple of things that I want to share.
Okay.
One of which you might, my son might put it in that category. One of which I definitely don't want to put in the same category. But the
Yeah.
first is I got this thing. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, hey,
That
Star
I've
Wars,
got.
my
Yeah,
language.
you'll resonate with that, right? And
I
it's
do.
got I have a whiteboard here behind me, and so I've got all these whiteboard markers, and this is something that my younger son Jaden made for me. It's, I don't know, it's like a balsa wood or something, and painted with this blue paint with Clone Wars, Star Wars characters stuck all over it, which he would probably face palm if he saw right now, because he, is not. He's 13-year-old competitive hockey player and not in the Star Wars thing. Mold. But here's a note that I've got just right in my eyes, just away from the camera here, that I can't recycle or get rid of this. I wonder if you can see it. I'll try to put it right in front of there.
Don't forget to heart. Don't forget to love, Jaden.
Yeah.
That's right.
Don't forget to love Jaden. And he would leave these notes all over the house. He would write it on my mom's calendar. And he would say, "Hey, Grammy, don't forget to love Jaden." Here's another one. I'm not quite sure if this is a face or what it is.
Don't forget to love Jaden. Yeah, yeah. I'm thinking it's a face. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a face after it's, looks like a face that's been out in Vegas or something like that. I don't know. But um,
These little tokens, these talismans, they're
yeah,
important.
yeah.
And it's funny, you brought up an interesting point about cheating yourself too, out of sometimes that table. Because full disclosure, and this is something I'm kind of leaning into and trying to explore a little bit more for myself. I love to do that cooking. I post that stuff. I take a picture of every meal I make. I don't always post them, but I always take a picture because there's a pride element to it. But then when I sit down, and I've had so many friends call me out on this, I'll make this beautiful meal and then I will inhale it because my dad was a boarding school kid. So I partially blame him and the way he eats. Also, I had an older brother. If you didn't eat, if you didn't eat quickly, you didn't eat. I mean, I joke, but I eat very quickly. And so the concept that I've been leaning into and the word that's become kind of a mantra for me of late has been savor.
Mm.
So I'm trying, when I'm here eating by myself, I'll do this shortly when I go make some lunch, is take a bite and put the damn fork and knife down and just breathe and enjoy it. And I think it's such a great concept for, yes, while I'm eating from a very practical sense, it's better for your digestion and, slow the hell down, Ian. And two, just in life, to savor those moments, savor those little things that can be so amazing.
I'm having trouble getting past the visuals that come into my mind when you use the word inhale.
Oh,
And we started about, and when I asked you about mashed potatoes, I thought, well, there's a brand space that you could own. It's probably, well, I don't know any better or worse than, say, Hoover or
yes,
wood
sure.
chipper. I worked for a guy once, and I remember we were eating at this small restaurant, and he had I think it was a shepherd's pie. It was a kind of concoction that had a few different layers to it. And I remember watching, it was just in one smooth motion that the fork just kept digging through this thing. And just it was making this disappear. And I
It's like a
remember
rototiller or something.
it's sort of like that. And I remember thinking about one of those wood chippers that you'd see the city workers and they're jamming these tree limbs into that they just disappear. And I thought, I got to stay away from this or I'm going to lose a limb here. But there wasn't a lot of savoring going on there. What's that like when you're on the road? I mean, you travel so much speaking, and my experience has been it can be an added challenge to find the foods you want and maybe the time and the environment you want. You got to prioritize it and make it, I guess, especially if you're in hotel rooms or different environments or you're just taking what's available to you. But what does that look like for you when you're on the road?
Well, it's not a challenge to eat. You can always eat. It's a
Yeah.
challenge to eat well, as in, being healthy or what have you. So yeah, sometimes it's completely location based. If I'm between shows, like I've got a day where I'm doing 2 or 3 different presentations, I've got there's a Tim's, I'm going to grab a sandwich, I'm going to go. And yeah, and there's a lot of times on the road I'm eating in the car. When it
Mm.
comes to my dinners, one, I'm always grateful for the opportunity if I'm in a city or town or village or whatever all across this country where I know somebody. And
Mm.
one, I will offer to cook at their house because I don't get to cook on the road. Or two, just to say, excuse me, do you want to grab dinner?
Mm.
And to be able to sit across from someone that you know and care for and share that meal, break bread, have that sacred experience together. But a lot of times that won't happen. Sometimes I'll be in some town and I don't know anybody and I've got to go eat. And there was a time where I would pick something up and could take it to my room and eat alone. But I've more been in the practice now of either, I think it's a very refreshing and awesome experience to get a table and sit by yourself. That can be tough for a lot of people, but
Mm.
get a table and sit alone. It can open you up to a whole bunch of things. Or if I feel like conversation, I will go and sit at the bar somewhere. And if I'm sitting at not that I'm necessarily going to be, drinking a whole bunch, but then there's at least someone across the bar that I can talk to.
Mm.
So it's about finding those moments and creating them. And the other thing when you sit at the bar to eat is there's often other people sitting alone near you. And I've made friends with people that are also, we're all facing the same direction, but you turn that chair and you say, hey, how's your meal? And just start a conversation. It can be a pretty amazing thing.
That's neat. I'm curious about how you crafted a life that kept you on the road so much to begin with, because you've been doing it for a while now. How did it
Yeah.
start?
Oh, I'll give you the shortest version that I can. But
You've got as much time as you want.
I grew up in this area. I grew up in the London area. I'm St. Thomas. Moved here when I was 3 and went to high school here. And I was a student leadership kid in high school. Student council all the way through. Student council president in my last year. In that last year, I became part of an organization that no longer exists. That was called the Ontario Secondary School Students Association, the OSSSA, we used to call it. And it was 12 elected regional presidents for 12 regions of the province, and we were all part of a provincial board that was supposed to be student voice for the province. And one of our mandates as a regional president, which I was fortunate enough to be elected for the London area, was to run a conference, student leadership conference over a weekend, like a Friday night till a Sunday midday kind of thing. So April 7, 8, and 9 of 1989, I ran, myself and this committee of 30 other student leaders from all across the across the area, put on this conference at Oak Ridge Secondary. We had about 250, 260 students there. I was the MC. We brought in motivational speakers like Alvin Law, who's now become a mentor and friend of mine.
Wow.
And, I'm grateful that he's now a friend, and he was pretty young in the business at that point. But I was kind of up on the stage, okay, we're going to do this now, and we're going to do this, and just was kind of the guy up there a lot of the time. And it was about 2 weeks after, and I'm grateful for obviously all the people on that committee, many of whom are still my dearest, dearest friends. But it was about 2 weeks after that, a girl who was on student council at John Paul II in London, which was still in a tiny building, which I think is now Gabrielle Dumont in London. JP2 used to be there in this little wee tiny building. And she gave me a call at home, because that's what you did in the 80s. She said, hey, do you want to come and speak at my school? And I said, why? And she said, oh, just come and tell stories and be funny like you were at the conference. It'll be great. And I went, okay, sure. And I went, and I sucked. It was when I think back at it, I want to curl up in a ball in the corner, because I had no idea what I was doing. I was 18 years old and thought, the sun shone completely on me. And so I just got up there and told all kinds of stories. People were circling up and talking amongst themselves on the gym floor. I mean, it was horrendous. But when I think back to it, there was maybe 3 or 4 minutes out of the hour that they gave me. In fact, I think they gave me 45 minutes and I went for an hour. But there was maybe 3 or 4 minutes in there where people stopped talking and were just looking at me and paying attention to what I was saying. So somewhere in the deep recesses of my brain, I obviously thought, okay, if you ever get a chance to do this again, do that. And over the course of the next several years, because I stayed involved with that leadership organization, these 12 conferences that happened a year needed speakers, and usually speakers that were free, or cheap. And so I was in university at the time, and I just travel and go like, yeah, pay my expenses, I'll come to the conference. And sometimes that led into doing a handful of schools here and there through university. And then come 1992, 2 of my dearest friends that were on the committee in 89 and had run the conference in 88, the year before, Stu Saunders and Andy Thibodeau, who you know well and have had on the podcast,
Mhm.
they had started speaking as a duo. And Stu came to me and we had lunch one day, and he said, hey, I want to start a company. I want to run a summer camp, because he was a big summer camp guy. He said, I want to run a summer camp, but doing the student leadership stuff that we did in high school, and do it for high school students. And he had this big, crazy idea, which are the best ideas in the world. And so the 3 of us, with another person that was on that committee named Dwayne Kerrigan, the 4 of us got together and we started Youth Leadership Camps Canada, YLCC. We had 52 kids in Park Hill, Ontario in the first summer. I don't even know that we had a first aid kit on hand. I mean, We were 23 years old. We didn't have a clue what was going on.
Yeah.
And we've all gone our separate ways, but continued to work in parallel. Andy's speaking, obviously. I'm speaking. Stu's a speaker for a lot of years, but Stu kept the company going. And so now, 28 years later, YLCC services 170,000 students a year, runs the Ontario Student Leadership Conference, the BC Student Leadership Seminars, the Global Student Leadership Summit, a Spark event leadership event at Canada's Wonderland, have a speakers bureau, have a media program, and still runs the camp for 3,000 students Is it 3,000? It's got to be more than that. Every summer. And so that's kind of the parallel part of the story, but I just kept speaking. And I went through school to be a teacher. I wanted to do high school English. I saw Dead Poets Society in high school. That was going to be my jam. And I just, by the time I graduated with my English degree, it was the early 90s in Ontario, and it was damn near impossible to get into teachers college. So I just kind of kept speaking, and that was around the time that the company started, and it gave me the opportunity. I walked away from it as a full-time gig for a few years when my kids were little. For about 5 years, I do a handful of gigs a year, and then I came back full-time in about 2003. And I'm insanely grateful. I talk to speaker friends of mine, and I can't believe when I'm in the middle of a presentation on mic, there's about 7 different conversations happening in my head, but one of them is going, dude, I can't believe they're paying me for this. Because I get to get up on stage, I get to make people laugh and tell them what I think, and I get paid for it. I'm insanely grateful.
You might have answered what I was going to ask next, which was, have you ever wanted to do anything else, or even to just stop even temporarily what you're doing? You did out of necessity, it sounded like, but
Sure.
It doesn't sound as if you've arrived at a point where you've started to kind of do an evaluation of your life and am I really in the right lane? Or have you had times where you've thought, is this what I want to keep doing, or is there something else out there?
I've never questioned the speaking per se. As you said, out of necessity, I went and I took a sales job for about 5 years. And it was funny because the stage was a thing that brought me back. Because in 2003, London hosted the Canadian Comedy Awards for the first time. I think they did it 5 or 6 years. And for that first year, they did the funniest person with a day job contest, the funniest person in London, amateur stand-up. Now, I was a stand-up kid. Like, when I was like, I've got on my wall back here in my office, I have the 3 Wise Men on vinyl: Steve Martin, Robin Williams, and George Carlin. I've got their 3 albums in frames on my wall. I adored stand-up. When I was 12, all I wanted to be was a stand-up comic. Because I remember my dad asking me, and I said, I want to be a stand-up comedian. And he said, why? And I said, because I want to make the whole world laugh. That was, again, part of my healing at that time. So I thought, screw it. I'm going in this stand-up contest. And I did, and I won. And it ended up becoming a much bigger deal than I thought it was going to be, and started getting stand-up gigs. And it made me realize, I need to get my ass back on stage, because this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I started speaking again, and then gave up doing stand-up. I'd achieved some, minor goals that I'd had in terms of stand-up, but frankly, at that time, it was a pretty negative world. They wanted comics to be dark and edgy and blue, and that's just not my jam. So I so prefer speaking to people. Like, give me an hour. I get to make you laugh, because I would get upset with other comics because it was all this anger and vitriol. And I'd be like, we're making people laugh. This is supposed to be fun. Like, what are you doing? Nope. Hang on. I'm getting a phone call that I'm going to turn off. There we go.
Hopefully it's somebody calling who wants you to come and do some blue comedy.
Yes, blue comedy, exactly.
I'm laughing thinking about because you've got a personality like a teddy bear. I mean that in the most respectful and the kindest and most loving way. So to see you to turn it from Winnie the Pooh into Ted would be something that might be interesting to see, but only once.
Only once. I mean, it's funny because in those days, like, I would do the same material. just as we'd be sitting back in the green room, a group of comics, and you'd hear somebody, their material killing, but because it's 25 people on a Thursday night at a comedy club, nobody wants to be the only one laughing. So nobody laughs, even if they're killing. And this person kills and out of frustration dropped an F-bomb. And then everybody laughed. And back in the green room, all of the comics, we all went, okay, so this is what we're dealing with. And we called it the 4-letter defense.
Mm.
And I would literally do the exact same material that I would play clean all the time and just drop bombs in there, and everybody laughed. It made me feel gross, like I needed a shower when I was done. But sometimes that's what people wanted. And that was really indicative of comedy, club comedy at that time. It's changed a lot now. And you got like people like Jim Gaffigan who play clean and pack stadiums. And, so that's great. It's a different time. But no, long way of answering your question. This is what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing. I'm rounding the corner into 50 this year, and I feel like I'm just getting warmed up. I feel like I have so much more to say. And one of my mantras this year of 49 has been, I am sprinting into 50. That's the way I look at it.
It sounds to me like, I'm just writing this down because I love that. I've heard you say that before, and I didn't write it down. I want to remember that. It sounds like understanding who you are is a pivotal thing, but also understanding who you are not when you dabble in a few different things. And even though with something like stand-up, you find you've got some proficiency in it and even enjoy it, but that in order to take that even further, to do it that way, I'm going to have to pretend to be something that I'm really not. And there's a price to be paid if you follow that road, isn't there?
There is, and I saw that price being paid. I remember doing a show in Toronto one time. A buddy of mine, K. Trevor Wilson, who's now on Letterkenny. He and I did a bunch of stand-up together back in the day, and he was hosting a show at a bar in Toronto, said, hey, do you want to come out and do like 25, 30 minutes? And I did, and it was fun, but it's a bar crowd, which is a little bit different. But there was this guy who was up there. I don't remember who it was. He was on either before or after me, and just spewing venom from the stage, just angry, angry, angry. And I remember this so stuck with me. His last words when he got off the stage, as people were like awkwardly going, ha, 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 because he was being so angry. And he said, like really with a lot of anger in his voice, don't you get it? I want you to hate me. And I thought, wow, like go to a therapist. Don't do stand-up. Like, that's not what this is for. You're supposed to be making people laugh, as I said. And that's just my own opinion of that world. And people can work blue. And I love people that work. There are comics that work blue that I love. And it's not that I don't ever swear. I swear a lot in my personal life. But on stage, I want to deliver positive messages. And it's not about anger. If if the intention that you're bringing to anything, it can be anger, it can be happiness, it can be joy, it can be sadness, it can be any number of things, but intention is huge. And intention comes across in the words that you use, in the way that you carry yourself, in the energy that you present.
Absolutely. Ian, we've got a question from somebody watching from San Diego, California right now.
Oh, wow. One of my favorite cities to visit. I love San Diego. I would fly to San Diego just to get the lobster bisque at the Harbor House restaurant and then turn around and come home. That good.
We've got Cheryl watching and contributing some comments, and thank you, Cheryl. And she asked, Ian, what advice do you have for a college student who wants to be a speaker?
Oh, that's interesting. I was just on a phone call just before we did this with someone that I've had the good fortune of meeting over the last few months in sort of a newer speaker community that I've become a part of in the Toronto area through this competition that I did called Speaker Slam. And he's wanting to get into doing this as a full-time gig. What I would say to a college student especially is, one, the most important thing is figure out what you want to say. This is a thing where you don't just get up and speak. You've got to have a purpose. You've got to have a message. And so, okay, what's the message that I want to say? Step one. Step two, how are you going to say it? Do you have personal stories? Do you have observations? Do you have, what are the different things you've got to help deliver that message? Because it's probably going to be either here's the point I want to make, and here's a story to back it up, or here's a story, and here's the point at the end, with some connective tissue in between. And so the advice I always give when I'm talking with speakers is if you're doing a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it may be, whatever that chunk of time is that you want to build, come up with one sentence that summarizes your message in one sentence, one phrase, whatever it may be, and summarize that. And it once you've got that sentence, it's like your thesis statement in an essay. Once you have your thesis for your hour, you go back through and look at all the stories and the stuff that you're building and ask yourself for each little piece, whether it's a 5-minute or a 10-minute piece, whatever it may be, and say, does this serve that message? And if it's not serving that message, why is it in there? If it's in there as a connective piece, fine. If it's in there to get a little bit of a laugh and break things up, also fine, as long as it doesn't go too long. So what's the message, and is every story serving it? And then within those stories, what's the message from that story? And is that story, like, what do I want to say? And am I actually saying it? And then, quite frankly, if you want to become a speaker, get up and do it in front of anybody who will let you as often as possible. I mean, from 18, when I did that first one, I was 18, almost 19 years old. I got paid $75 by John Paul II to go and speak at their school. $75. When I was doing these conferences and stuff, I was doing it for expenses, and even sometimes not. It's like doing open mic nights in stand-up. You got to do it for free and build it up until you're going to get paid. Whether it's a local, like, community group or a church group or a conference or a meeting, anybody who will give you a mic and let you, because you're never going to know what your material's like until you say it out loud and hear it land with an audience. So do it as often and often and often as you can, and keep refining and refining and refining, and make sure you're working in service to that message. And then maybe eventually you'll get to the point where you can get paid for it.
Have you ever done the same talk twice? I mean, like the exact same talk twice, to your point about refining and refining and refining?
Well, I mean, I have for clients, I have like 3 different 1-hour presentations that are the same stories. But I think, to your point, yeah, there's always different turns of phrase.
Mm-hmm.
There's always something different coming into your mind that if they say, oh, you've got 65 minutes instead of 60. Ooh, okay, I've got room to play. So I'm going to try some new things out that may have been rattling around in my brain, or something causes you to say something with a little bit different cadence, or to change the words around. And when it comes out, you go, ooh, I like that.
Yep.
I mean, I was just doing some updates on my website recently, and I was looking at some videos that I have up there, and I watched one of them, and I tell the exact same story still, but it made me cringe listening to this piece from 5 years ago that, again, I tell the same story, but I tell it so differently now, even with just, maybe it's subtle changes that only I see. I don't know. But so is it exactly the same way, word for word every time? No, never.
Yeah, I find that it's kind of like watching a kid grow who lives with you, as opposed to someone that you only see every couple of years or so. And
Yeah.
whoa, you don't notice it so much day to day, or if you're working out every day and you don't necessarily see the gains, that it's a craft that shows itself to you the more you do it. I find the part that you mentioned, Ian, about summarizing with a sentence what you shared, and Cheryl, by the way, has said that she really appreciates all this advice.
My pleasure.
What you shared it sounds pretty simple, but it can be really tricky to nail that down, right? Sometimes you've got to write that out to give you a bit of a North Star to follow and get you moving forward and get you under the lights and in front of people. Even if it's Aunt May and Uncle Buck, that's okay. Yep. Because you'll do it, and then you'll find out, oh, now I've got this piece and I should maybe drop that. And especially at the start, my experience has been, and I'm nowhere near, I'm just at the very beginning compared to the body of work that you had, but I found that I really, even with the best of intentions, started with a block of wood. and then just am chopping off large pieces of it for the first while until now I start to refine and shape it more specifically. But there was a lot of hacking and and whacking in the early stages.
For sure. I mean, you can write all you want, but if you'll never know until you hear it coming out of your mouth in front of people.
Yeah.
Never know. I mean, one of my presentations that, I mean, I give them titles, but whatever. One of my presentations called Hooray for Everything. That thing was rattling around in my brain for a long time. And I road tested it with clients, and there was stuff that didn't work. And then it's interesting because when you take things like Mo Mondays or Speaker Slam that I participated in, or TEDx presentations, I find those as an excellent self-teaching tool. So I'd been trying for probably 4 or 5 years to get this Hooray for Everything positive attitude speech off the ground. And I've been writing and writing, and I've been trying it and refining and all these things. And then I had the opportunity to do a TEDx in Kingston. This is probably 7 years ago. And so I said, okay, I'm going to take the entire message of this Hooray for Everything hour, and I'm going to refine it down to the 18 minutes that I have. Can I get the whole message across in 18 minutes in a concise way? And then work and work and work and boil it down and reduce it until I've got that. And then once I did it, the hour felt luxurious. And then I also realized, well, this piece I was doing before does not work, and it doesn't serve the message. And I started doing other things, and it continues to refine every time that I do it. I did a gig in London last week for the RCMP for an officers conference. They gave me an hour and a half, which was awesome. And I was able to put a whole bunch of other stuff in there. But I was talking to my friend Nick, fellow speaker, afterwards, and how did it go? I said, I did about 2 or 3 minutes on intention. I don't even remember what I said. Not because it wasn't good, like it was all thoughts I'd had before, but I didn't remember how I said it. So the hope then becomes, next time I do this, if I've got that opportunity, that it's just the little neural pathways that have been created are going to make those words come out again. Because that's the way that tends to work for me. If I riff something, when I get to that point in the presentation again, that riff will come back. Because I usually don't remember by the time I'm done.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. You've mentioned a lot of things in there that I can really resonate with, and I'd love to explore. Maybe we'll do another podcast at some point. Before our time runs out, I really have wanted to ask you, as somebody who speaks to so many students and is in so many school type environments and have been doing it as long as you have, what changes have you noticed, if any, Ian, in what's in front of students on kind of a day-to-day basis, or what they relate to, or how they even relate to you now versus how it was even maybe 10, 15 years ago? What comes to mind?
Oh, there's a couple of things you bring up in there. One, what's changed, and it's funny, I do get asked that question because of, being around for this long, and because you work with students, like, oh, what are the problems they're experiencing today? And people talk about things like bullying and all that stuff a lot, with cyberbullying and all of those new things. I would say when you boil it all down, the problems that the students today are facing are no different than the ones that I was facing when I was going to high school in the 80s. They're just turned up to 11 because the delivery method and the environment that they work within is so vastly different than what was happening, when I went to school. Like, when back in our day, if somebody was picking on you at school and saying terrible things to you, the bell would ring at 3:30 and it's over. But now it continues at home.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my friend Anthony McLean talked about that in an anti-bullying film that YLCC put together called Rising Above. And yeah, like it would, that stuff just continues now because of online, and people can come to you anonymously and say horrible, hateful stuff to you. In terms of relatability, that's something that, especially given the sector of the business and the fact that I've worked a lot with youth, that is certainly on my mind. Because you have to be relatable. Some of my references might get dated, And that's fine if it's just references. But as long as the message, the core message that I'm taking, or that I'm trying to deliver, is something that they can relate to, then that's great. That's what you want. You need it to be relatable. I can talk about how I overcame a thing in my life and overcame that obstacle. But if I don't make the fact that I overcame that thing relatable to the kid who's struggling because they've got a math test tomorrow and they are terrified that they're going to fail, or they've got something going on at home with their parents, maybe they're in the middle of a divorce or something like that, and they don't know how to deal with it. If I can somehow make it relatable to them in that way, so that I get, I mean, I love the laughs. I love the applause. That's all great. What I want when I'm doing any presentation is a nod. I want one person by themselves in the audience to nod like they're going, yeah, yeah, I get it. I hear what you're saying. I'm picking up what you're laying down. That to me is what relatability is about. Is getting that back from somebody. And it can just be a little moment. They don't even know that I see them. But if I see somebody go, huh, and nod their head like, that's winning. That's job done, because you've related to them in some way. So relatability is key, because you can tell, I mean, there are current and former athletes and celebrities of all kinds that speak, that talk about, somebody that talked about climbing Mount Everest. But if you don't make climbing around Mount Everest relatable to the person sitting in the audience, it's just a cool story.
How, if at all, has continuing to, I'm trying to find the vocabulary here, Ian, continuing to tune into what's relatable to students, to get inside their mind and their life, what are they seeing through their windshield? I think that's a very valuable skill for any of us to acquire about anybody that we're looking to communicate to try to see things through their eyes, to make
Sure.
it relatable. I certainly default to worried and thinking about myself. This is valuable to think about how this is to somebody else and to make it relatable to them. So the question that I have to draw this back around is, how, if at all, did that continuing to tune in to what's relatable to the students affect your relationship as it evolved with your own kids?
Well, one, they helped to keep me relatable, for sure, because they were, when they were in high school and I'm speaking at high schools, I'm hearing from them what's going on, and the things they're doing, and they continue to. I'll talk to my kids or talk to students that I work with, what have you, and you find out, like, certainly there's a lot of things technology wise, yeah, I don't get it at all. I'm all over social media, but I know I've even made the line now when I get to the end of a presentation and I'm giving students, okay, here's my website and here's the links to my socials. So Instagram and Twitter is this, and then my Facebook is up there, and I'm like, I'd give you my Facebook, but you're not on there anyway, because they're not. 10 years ago they were, but the kids now aren't. I don't have a TikTok account. I don't get how it works. I don't understand. I don't get it. I mean, I know it's good for a laugh. I'm not going to start necessarily putting out TikTok content. I don't understand. But again, it's peeling back the layers, because a lot of the stuff, when you talk about the technology or anything else that's happening in the world, it's window dressing. Take it all away. What's the problem, and how can I relate to that? Take all of the other stuff away. It's a delivery method. It's window dressing. It's decoration. Take it away, and what's the problem you're having, and do I have something that I can share that may potentially help you with that problem?
Deborah's asked a question that I think is a really good one.
Is that Deborah Gilboa?
It is.
My friend from
It
Pittsburgh.
is.
I love her dearly.
Thanks to Deborah. Jennifer Coleman's also pitched in with some really
Hi, Jennifer.
some nice words here as well. As well as Cheryl watching. Deborah asked, great question, Deborah. She says, have kids' ability to handle those problems changed?
I think yes and no. They certainly have a lot more tools at their disposal. It's whether they use them.
Yeah.
Because the technology even provides, like, you can see a therapist on your phone. There are apps where you can text with a therapist, which is great. And there's access to help for kids that are having these problems. It's like anything else. It's whether you use it properly or not. The internet, social media, all these different things we have at our disposal, in my mind, are a tool like a hammer. But you can use a hammer to build a house. You can also use a hammer to tear a house down. It depends on how you use the tool. And so I think I think there may be some difference in coping mechanisms sometimes, because we get to throw so much window dressing and so much other noise around things. The students sometimes don't come down to coping with a problem, because you can bury it with so much other stuff. And a lot of that comes down to parenting. And the parents, you see, these terms get thrown around of helicopter parent, lawnmower parent, the Canadian version, curling parent, because they're gonna sweep the house and clear the path so that the kids never have to go through anything. I think that becomes part of it, because maybe we grew up in a generation where, because our parents were boomers, left over from post-war generation, maybe in some people's minds there wasn't as much love and caring and nurturing as we wanted. So we then become parents and want to love and care and nurture and be our kids' friends, when what they need is a parent, not a friend. They need somebody to tell them no, and they need somebody to tell them, you got to get through this. Here's some help, here's some ideas, but you got to get through it. Nobody gets to be wrapped in bubble wrap and dipped in hand sanitizer, like going through this life. I sometimes use the example when I'm presenting. I talk about how I'll talk to people after a presentation sometimes, and we'll talk about things like, the negative things in people's lives. And so many people talk about them like there's a mystical force that's dragging their life down. The universe is working against them. There is a mystical force in the universe that's working against you, and it's called gravity. It's the thing we all fight against to stand up every day. It's a battle. We are forcing ourselves to stand up. So the reason I bring up gravity is when they send people off in the International Space Station or long-term shuttle missions, they're in a zero gravity environment. They don't have to fight that fight anymore. Their bones weaken, their muscles atrophy. People like Chris Hadfield comes back to Earth a different height than when he left. You're less than what you can be when you don't fight that fight. So when the bad stuff comes, it's gravity. It's making you stronger. The fact that you're fighting against it, the fact that you continue to stand up every time it pulls you down, makes you stronger. And I think that we've got too many people, whether it's parents or students, what have you, that are trying to wrap themselves in bubble wrap and dipped in hand sanitizer. Protect yourself from all problems. Look, the fact that I lost a parent, the fact that you lost a grandparent, the fact that, breakups are things that I've gone through, both of us having gone through a divorce, different things that happen in our lives, that's just standing up in the face of gravity. That's making you stronger, making you continue to be able to move forward.
And one of the things that provides some space amidst all of that is pausing and connecting and nourishing. And I'll throw this word back at you, savoring, right?
Absolutely.
Because in the midst of all of that, I was going to offer as well further to the question that Deborah asked about ability to cope with challenges. On one hand, I think it would be pretty easy to make the argument that there are more distractions than ever with smartphones and technology and social media and all these kinds of things. And
Sure.
it seems to me that's pretty clear. But I would also suggest I don't think we've ever had more conversation. We've never been more open about looking out for each other and tearing away at some of these old, tired, ignorant, in my own opinion, stigmas about certain things. And just as a society, as we're evolving as as beings, emotionally, and how we communicate and understanding about each other and whatnot, and looking out for each other. And so I think that there are always two sides. There's always the dark and there's always the light, and one rises to meet the other. So there's a lot of good stuff happening out there too, isn't there, Ian? Guys like you and conversations being started and people looking out for each other to hold that space and find that good stuff and savor and share it.
Well, there's 100%. There's students that I meet every day when I'm working in schools that are just out there doing incredible things. I mean, I think one of the things about the generation that's coming up right now, probably more so than we've seen since the flower power generation in the 60s, they want to change the world.
Yeah.
There are a lot of tools at their disposal to change the world, but they're not going to wait around. And I think that's great. I mean, that's that whole thing that's come out in the last few weeks, that expression, okay, boomer. I don't know if you've heard about that one. That's a new expression that's happening whenever somebody from the baby boomer generation complains about complains about a thing that happens. They go, okay, boomer. Like, okay, you're done. Move along. It's our turn now. And I think that's what's great about this generation is I think that there is so much unbelievable potential. You look at somebody like Greta Thunberg, who just traveled across the US and Canada and took a boat across from Sweden. This girl wants to change the world. And she sat there in Congress and at the Senate and literally said, well, not literally, but went, okay, boomer. Like she said, get out of my way. I'm trying to change the world. Get out of our way. That's what we've got to do, because the ideas are there. The strength in these people are there. A lot of whether it's millennials or Gen Z, they get a lot of stuff put on them about, how they're pampered and they're entitled and everything else. Boomers are entitled. Gen X we're all entitled. We all get to that point eventually. There's so much coming at them so fast and they're forced to grow up, but they have these tools at their disposal, and I think they're going to change the world. The problem is in ways that maybe the generations before are not ready for yet.
It's interesting stuff, Ian. I love it. I love this conversation. I could keep it going probably for hours and hours, and I would enjoy every second of it. We'll have to come back around and do it again. I see us having a sci-fi only conversation at some point too.
Let's the whole hour on Star Wars.
Yeah, two children of the late 70s and early 80s. Don't get me kidding. Get me going.
Don't get the camera going around my nerd cave here. You would see all the stuff and the things. So.
Well, I mean, we've been talking for almost an hour and a quarter, and Battlestar Galactica hasn't even come up yet, and I don't know quite how that could possibly be. But anyway,
I haven't even grabbed this guy once. My little Yoda here. I don't even.
And I see Baby Yoda trending with this new Mandalorian thing. Anyway, I should not have opened that. Just forget I mentioned it. Just stop.
Next time.
Just back it up. Ian, how and where can people find and connect with you?
I would love if people would find and connect with me. My website is iantyson.ca, as I'm always careful to say, especially in this country, not .com. That's the country singer. So there is a legendary Canadian folk and country singer named Ian Tyson. He's at .com. I'm .ca. If you see a cowboy hat, you're in the wrong place.
Okay.
And on there, I mean, I love when people connect on social media. Instagram and Twitter, I am just at Ian Tyson, IANTYSON, and Ian Tyson Speaker is Facebook.
Awesome. I love it. Ian, I really appreciate you. I'm so grateful that our paths have crossed. Your time has been a real gift to me, and the spirit and energy that you have sent my way and shown me. Not just that you came onto the Mo Mondays London stage and were a part of things that way, but then you came back and added your energy into the room. And those are moments for me where I have to shake myself. And those are the things that I savor, are the connections and the people and the spirit of people like you that I think, wow, I'm really lucky. I must be in the right lane because I'm coming across people like Ian Tyson. And so I just want to say thank you.
I appreciate the stage that you gave me and the community that you've created there, because I love I came out to the last Mo Mondays by myself and found a table and said, hey, is this seat empty? I love that. And then I'm sitting around a table with people and we're still sharing an experience. We're not having mashed potatoes, but we're getting some spiritual nourishment for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Ian, thank you for doing this as well. Safe travels, happy holidays, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon, bud.
You too, my friend. Thank you so much.
You bet. That's Ian Tyson. And what a great conversation there. Boy, we covered a lot of territory here over the last hour and almost a quarter. This is episode 94 of Journeys with the No Schedule Man. You'll be able to find it and the entire archive of all of the episodes of this podcast online at noscheduleman.com, and then just click the podcast page, or you can go directly to noschedulemanpodcast.com. Either way, that'll take you to my website. When you're there, you can sign up to our email list to stay up to date on future episodes of the podcast and other things that I'm involved with. You'll also find information about the No Schedule Man's Mindset and Marketing Mastermind community, which is now open to new members. All the information about that and whether or not you feel that that's a good fit and something that could be a positive thing for your life and journey will be there as well. I think that you'll find that at noscheduleman.com/mastermind, it'll answer all the questions that you might have. Want to say thanks as well to Connect One Consulting, Diamond Golden Treasures, Susan and Luke of Travel Agents in Action. Also thanks to Provincial Glass and Mirror, Trickit Financial, and Mo Mondays London for their support of Journeys with the No Schedule Man. And most of all, I want to thank you for investing this time with Ian and myself. Thank you so much for watching and listening. This is Journeys with the No Schedule Man. On behalf of Ian Tyson, I'm Kevin Bulmer. Thank you again so much, and we'll see you next time.